Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre with TeddyBaldassarre.com. In this video, we're looking at a watch from Marathon, their definitive field watch with the general purpose. So in this video and on this channel, we cover watches available for purchase on our website, TeddyBaldassarre.com, as a full authorized dealer. So in this video, deep dive on this timepiece, final points of consideration at the end, but also throughout this video, if you have further questions, check out the link in the description down below to the product page where you can learn more, purchase the watch, and book a time with one of our dedicated watch specialists as well. But guys, let's jump into the video, take a closer look at this watch. When it comes to military spec inspired watches and just actually watches with true military use case, you have to talk about Marathon, a brand that's been doing this since World War II, supplying timekeepers to the Allied forces beginning in 1941. Now today we're going to take a look at the general purpose mechanical at 39 millimeters, which honestly isn't really true at 39, we'll talk about that, but a watch that derives much of its modern aesthetics from the Vietnam War era Marathon reference, the GGW 113. So let's take a closer look at this field watch. Beginning with a look at the Marathon GPM on the wrist, we have a moderately sized 36 millimeter case diameter with a restrained 44 millimeter lug to lug and a reasonable 10.7 millimeter thickness without the underlying NATO strap. Now Marathon calls this a 39 millimeter case in much of their materials, but you should know that that also is going to include the crown in that measurement. So for example, when measuring from the 10 to 4 o'clock across the case, it's closer to that of a 36 millimeter, which I find is actually a more accurate depiction of how this one wears. This is a small field watch to be sure, but it's not the smallest field watch in the Marathon catalog. That's a title reserved for the 34 millimeter general purpose mechanical, a piece that we took a look at earlier in 2021. In terms of wearing experience, this does fit a wide variety of wrists. I would say it's going to be better suited for those on the smaller end to the medium size end of the spectrum. I find that this watch actually wears closer to that of a 35 millimeter watch, and unlike a lot of field watches that have that extended broad lug to lug dimension, this one is going to have some of that element, but it's all going to be sized down proportionally to a stockier design that I think is going to be more appealing to those on the smaller end. When comparing it to the 34 millimeter option though, I think this is gonna be much more wearable. The general purpose at 34 millimeters in some ways comes off almost like a kid's watch, given the different case structure and colors. This one does feel a bit more mature in its execution, I think wears that way in practice. One commonality between though that 34 millimeter and this version is the 16 millimeter lug width, which looked fairly appropriate for the smaller case size, but here it does look noticeably smaller. There is enough of material on the lugs to shave off a millimeter off each side, so it is interesting that they did decide to go with this width. Now this particular general purpose mechanical is a reissue again of that Vietnam War era Marathon issued piece from the late 1960s. And while there are many similarities between the dial aesthetics and movement, the biggest difference is going to be the case design and shape. The original model featured the matte case finish and squared off lugs, both which carry over to this model, but the GPM case is a fluid unibody construction where the case seamlessly curves up into the bezel. It's a compelling design from all angles, and I think it really works well with the interior surfaces, just flowing lines, while the transitions to the side are sharp and relatively flat. The case features that matte black finish, which is going to create a tactical look. A push-pull crown is aligned at the 3 o'clock position, protected by these flowing, somewhat shallow crown guards. The crown is recessed in the first position, where you can hand wind the ETA 2801 movement inside and then set the time at that farthest pulled out position. Hacking seconds is also equipped with this movement to aid with precision time setting. Transitioning over to the dial, which is protected below by a sapphire crystal, we find a matte blasted black surface with prominent tritium gas tubes acting as hour markers. This combination is probably Marathon's most signature detail and really works well in this tactical application. A printed 12-hour scale is positioned just inside the outboard minute track, while a secondary 24-hour scale is printed along the inside for a familiar field watch format. A contrasting white syringe handset reads off the time. They also feature tritium gas tubes for low light illumination. Tritium gas has been used for decades in this tool watch category, although many brands have moved away from it towards more practical luminous paint like Superluminova. Tritium is different in the way that it works in that it doesn't require charging from a light source, so it's a constant illuminating material. And in terms of shelf life on this tritium, it is going to last around 15 to 20 years is usually the typical estimation that I see many stating. One other point about tritium is it's not going to offer up the highest or brightest intensity with its illuminating, but it is going to have the most consistent flow in very dark environments. You're also going to notice that with this dial and the hand stacking, it's going to be more vertically set than normal. You're going to see this dial seated way farther down within the case itself, which is kind of that defining characteristic that's going to be displayed with Marathon, which will make this very different than the conventional field watches. And I think that's important when you're talking about the competition of these watches in the price ranges. There are many good field watches in this price category. There is some dial text here. With the 12 o'clock, you have the writing of Marathon. You also have the 17 jewels being indicated. And you also have that nuclear logo, which is actually just going to be an indication that this watch is in compliance with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So turning the watch over, we have a solid case back inscribed with military details regarding the watch, referencing the model number, cage number, and the amount of tritium being used, among other details. The screw-down case back gives the GPM a minimum of 30 meters of water resistance for military specs, but it is capable of 50 meters according to some representatives from Marathon, so that is one strange note about this piece. Although water resistance is not going to be something you're going to be able to rely on and do a ton of water activities with, this watch is keeping in mind the military demands that these watches are really going to be issued under. Inside though, that case back is the ETA 28012, a 4 Hz movement that offers up a 50-hour power reserve on a fully wound mainspring. It's a reliable Swiss movement that really offers up, from the mechanical hand winding perspective, the same type of versatility, serviceability that comes with that of the ETA 2824. Another upside is going to be the fact that this is going to be a thinner movement for third-party standards, which is going to allow this watch to really rest in a nice place in regards to its thickness and where it's going to sit on the wrist. We did test this particular version as well as other versions, so just to provide some anecdotal evidence, they were running within single digits of perfect time of day when testing at 5 different positions. Just to unpack on this movement, 28,800 vibrations per hour, 4 Hertz. It does feature hacking and hand winding. Hacking, again, stopping the second hand when you pull the crown to the farthest position, and a power reserve of 50 hours approximately. Now to unpack looking at this Marathon general purpose mechanical. First off, this is going to be a field watch of many in the price range that you can look at. So that is one of the challenges for this watch and what it can potentially overcome. When you look at the likes of Hamilton and Bulova and some other brands that are offering some great field watches, doesn't it do enough to separate from the pack? In terms of general positioning and what it's offering up from a specification standpoint, I think it does a nice job. It might fall behind the likes of Hamilton in some of their movements with the 80 hours of power reserve and what's being offered on that end. So that's something you're certainly going to be up against, but that really is the case for pretty much any field watch that tries to do anything around $500 or less. Also, when talking about this watch, I think the number one characteristic is just the different design. The field watch, in essence, and what it's trying to go for, is all about no nonsense and being conventional, easy to read. That is what it's going for. For this watch here, because of the use of tritium, it has this more unique look, which I think is its almost saving grace to allow it to separate from the pack. The reason why you look at this watch is because it has this tactical look that even other field watches are going to have trouble with actually stacking up against to match that look. The single case design is also going to maybe be a little bit rounded out for some. It doesn't have the same line finishes that other conventional cases will have, so that's going to be up for grabs there in terms of where you're going to be. Water resistance is a bit of an interesting point as well, but all things considered, if you are looking for a very tactical looking field watch from a brand that actually does have heritage in this department of making field watches and military issued timepieces, this is where this one makes more sense. This is no nonsense at its finest. Swiss made watch, $500, ETA reliable movement on the inside, and I think better suited for those with smaller wrists with that cool charm that comes with tritium. All right, guys, well, thank you again so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon when future content is posted. Also, if you're in the market for this watch, check it out on teddybaldassarre.com. We're a full authorized dealer of over 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, also offer a full factory warranty for all of the new products that we carry, and a new pre-owned section as well, where we have some of the best and curated watches authenticated by our team and tested in-house. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.